After a recent promotion, I moved into a spacious old townhouse I found at an unbelievable price. The property had been vacant for years, but with some minor renovations, it was perfect for me. The house was and had some oddly designs with narrow hallways, high ceilings, and an unusual number of small dark rooms. A week after moving in, I started noticing strange things. Small items like my keys or a book moved from where I'd left them. At first, I chalked it up to absent-mindedness. But one night, as I was about to fall asleep, I heard a faint noise coming from somewhere inside the walls. It sounded like footsteps, but there was no one else in the house. I spent the next day examining the house, trying to locate the source of the noise. At the end of a dark hallway on the second floor, I noticed something odd, a really fainted outline of a door. It was painted over so many times that it was nearly invisible. I pushed on it and to my surprise, it creaked open, revealing a narrow, dust-filled staircase leading up to what seemed to be an attic room. Curiosity got the best of me. I climbed the steps, my flashlight piercing the darkness. The room at the top was small and cluttered, filled with broken furniture and an assortment of odd old toys and dusty family portraits. But what really caught my eye was the bed in the corner, neatly made as if someone had been using it recently. An eerie, rotting smell lingered in the air, and the walls were covered in strange, childlike drawings, figures with hollow eyes, twisted smiles, and long, spindly limbs. Unnerved, I turned to leave, but froze when I saw something scratched into the wooden floor. "Don't look at them." My heart pounded, but I told myself it was just graffiti. I rushed out of the room, slamming the hidden door shut behind me. Over the next few nights, things got worse. I would wake up at odd hours, feeling like I was being watched. Sometimes I'd catch a faint whisper coming from the forgotten room. At one point, I could have sworn I heard a child's laughter echoing through the walls. One night, while lying in bed, I opened my eyes and saw a shadow at the foot of my bed, a small figure with hollow eyes. And that twisted smile from the drawings. It was staring right at me, grinning. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, and just as I felt myself on the verge of passing out from terror, the figure leaned in and whispered, "You looked." I blinked and the shadow was gone. But the feeling of dread remained. I spent the night huddled in my living room, clutching a damn flashlight until dawn. Desperately, I called a contractor the next day and demanded that he seal off the forgotten room. He obliged, plastering over the door and making it disappear behind a wall once more. Relieved, I finally felt like I could breathe. But the following night, I wanted to cry. As I was about to sleep, I noticed something horrifying, drawn on the wall above my bed. As if by invisible fingers, were two hollow staring eyes and a twisted smile. Familiar. And in fresh, jagged handwriting were the words, "I'm still watching." I left the house the next morning and never went back. And while I moved on with life after that, I could never shake the feeling that somewhere, someone, or something was still watching me, waiting for the moment I dared to look again. This incident took place when I was about 10 years old. I was at my grandmother's place for the summer vacation, so was my sister, my mom, my aunt, and her daughter. At night, we used to spread mats on the floor and sleep in a long line in the hall, on account of the extreme humid heat. By rule, I am a heavy sleeper, but one night, for no good reason, I woke up and instinctively turned to look at my mom. I found her sound asleep. Not satisfied, I supported myself on my elbow and turned to look at the others. My gaze first fell on my cousin, who was barely a year old at that time. But the shocking part was that I found a gray figure bending over her. It was in the distinctive shape of a balding old man. I could even see his overcoat. The man looked like he was made of mist, and no sooner had I laid my eyes on him, he just vanished into thin air. To be honest, I did not feel afraid, I was just confused. Thinking that it was part of a dream, I just dozed off again. When I woke up in the morning, I remembered the weird dream and chucked to myself, Later, I overheard my mom and aunt talking about something that sounded interesting, so I sat right in between them. What my aunt told chilled me to my bone. It went something like this: I had a really strange dream last night. Someone was bending over my daughter. He looked like an old man. Peter Badenoch. I have had 3 encounters with paranormal activity in my current house that I'm living in. First time. I was a little boy about 7 years old, still in primary school in 1999. It was nighttime, had my pet cat sleeping with me on bed. My bedroom was completely pitch black and I was about to fall asleep until my cat jumped off the bed and started growling at something near the built-in wardrobe. I opened my eyes and I saw standing in front of the wardrobe a white glowing figure with red eyes. It tried to come closer, but my cat had growled at it, which made it step back. It tried to walk closer again, but the cat growled a third time. My mom had heard the commotion and turned the hallway light on, which made the white glowing figure walk back into the built-in wardrobe. Because Mom wanted to know what was going on. In the morning I told Mom about the incident and Mom was shocked because she thought the cat was attacking me. But as soon as I said it was the white glowing with red eyes figure, she regretted sending the cat out. Before that incident happened, our cat was affectionate to Dad. But after the incident she was aggressive towards him. Mom and I thought it was since the incident that happened with that red eyes glowing figure. So we had no choice but to give our cat to someone else. I then after was afraid to go to sleep in the dark, so I had to sleep with a night light. Second time. Later in the year 1999. I was playing some console games on my PlayStation 1 in the living room. It was daytime and I was enjoying playing on my game. Until all of a sudden the doorbell sounded. We had a double front glass door so you could see if there was anyone there. Which there wasn't. I resumed playing my game and the doorbell sounded again. I jumped up to rush to see if someone was pulling a prank, but I couldn't see anyone running away. I then resumed playing my game. Then the doorbell sounded again for the third time. I was the only one in the house as Mom and Dad was out doing shopping. So I was nervous. I decided to take out the doorbell batteries and then I continued with playing my game. Unexpectedly the doorbell sounded the fourth time. Even without the batteries in. I was very scared of what was happening. So I decided to just ignore the doorbell sound until it stopped. Third time. I was in high school in the year 2003. My mom likes to ring up our local radio station to share some of her life stories with the host and even to try and win things from the competition giveaways. But Mom had won an antique wooden tables and matching chairs for the kitchen, which was delivered to our house the same day. We then started using the table and chairs that day. Nighttime came and we went to sleep. All of a sudden I woke up hearing movement in the kitchen. I got up and investigated the sound. The moving sound had stopped happening as I had an eye-shot view of the kitchen. I saw the chairs out of place and one had moved. Mom had heard the noise as well and got up. She asked what was going on and I told her that I heard movement in the kitchen. And that the chairs had moved. Mom didn't believe me at first and told me to go back to sleep. Which I did. The next night it happened again, but I didn't investigate it. I knew Mom had heard the noise because she shouted out to me to go to sleep, which I was still in bed. We resumed our sleep and the movement noise had started up again. Mom got fed up and walked into the kitchen to think that I was causing the noise, which I wasn't as I was still in bed. And it wasn't Dad because he's a heavy sleeper. Mom called out to me to come, but I knew that if I did Mom would have assumed that it was me, making the movement noise in the kitchen. Mom stormed down the hallway to see that I was asleep and then went back to sleep. But I had kept my eyes closed to make her think that I was asleep at that time. I then fell asleep and it was morning. Mom had spoke to me that she felt it was the tables and chairs causing the incident. Because she heard it again, but one of the wooden chairs was rocking back and forth like a rocking chair while I was asleep just after the other time. So we got rid of them to the second-hand store. We brought our own tables and chairs into the kitchen. Nighttime came, we went to sleep and no noise had happened. Unfortunately, I still live in the same house as the incidents had occurred at because we can't afford to move. Our house is very cold. We don't get any visitors and I often wondered why. Our house used to be the old horse stables, but the original owners had turned it into a house. To this day I still see odd figures peering in through the windows. I feel a shiver, but I try not to let it bother or worry me. No, not the lettuce. My friend Jake's grandparents own a lake house his family shares, and after we graduated high school, Jake decided it'd be fun to spend a weekend there with a few friends. It was almost like one last celebration before we all went our separate ways for college. Jake's parents were nice enough to let us spend the weekend alone, so it was just the six of us. I arrived a bit late on Saturday, so I was only able to swim for a little bit before it got dark and we started a fire pit. Jake had raided his grandparents' fridge and got us a few drinks, and before long we were joking, sharing stories, and enjoying the night. As it got later, my friend Sam looked over at the water and we all followed her gaze. Just off the shore, a man in a small weathered fishing boat was looking at us. He was sitting completely still, watching us. There was no sound of a motor, no fishing gear, nothing to explain why he was there. It was as if he'd drifted in from out of nowhere. We stared at him until finally, without a word, he turned on a motor and disappeared back into the night. Once he was gone, we joked to relieve the tension, calling him the residential lake creeper and guessing why he would be out in the dark. Soon we forgot about him and carried on. But a while later, we heard water splashing and the hum of a small motor getting louder. We all looked over and sure enough, the man was back. He was closer this time. It was hard to make out his face, but we knew his eyes were locked on us. Finally, Sam called out, "Can we help you?" The man stopped, silent, and slowly gave us a small wave like you'd give your neighbor. Jake stood up and shouted, "You need to get the hell out of here, man. This is private property." The man didn't respond. He just stood there, staring before slowly shaking his head no. The gesture was terrifying, but the threat was enough for him to turn the boat and head back into the darkness. By that point we had enough, so, grabbing our stuff, we quickly put the lid on the fire and hurried inside, locking the doors behind us. Most of us went upstairs to get a better look, knowing he probably was still out there. From the window we scanned the lake, thinking he was gone for a second, until one of our friends pointed toward the shore. He was still there, gliding along the edge of the property, gaze never leaving the house. It was like watching an animal circle its prey. We went downstairs, debating whether to call the police, and rushed back up to check on him. He'd slowed down now, drifting closer. Then he bent down, picking something up. It was an old harpoon. He lifted it up as if he wanted us to see, and we knew there was no doubt anymore. He was threatening us. Jake immediately dialed 911. I stayed at the window watching him. The man started twirling the harpoon between his fingers like a baton. When Sam whispered, "Oh my God," I looked back and saw the man had tied his boat to the dock. He was stepping out, walking toward the house. As he was getting closer, a couple of my friends were saying we should try and rush him or lie and say that we have a gun. But before we could decide what to do, he was there. Knock, knock, knock. A light tap on the door which sounded almost polite. Then, in a low, friendly voice, he said, "Hello? Can I come in? It's cold out here." Nobody answered. The knock came again. "Please let me in. I just want to talk." Slowly, he moved around the house and we could hear the tip of the harpoon drag across the rock path as he circled the house. "Won't you let me in? I promise I won't hurt you." We were all hiding in the living room in the center of the house, away from any windows, but my other friend decided to yell out, "The police are on their way, so I would leave if I were you." I'm not certain it was loud enough for him to hear it from outside, but the tapping stopped. After a moment, a couple of us decided to run upstairs to see if his boat was still there, and I really wish we hadn't. We peeked out and saw that he was halfway down the path, still dragging the spear behind him, but stopped halfway. He turned around and raised the harpoon and threw it. It struck the side of the house with a thud, embedding itself into the wood so hard that the end of it was still vibrating. We jumped backwards from the window but quickly ran back to see what else he was doing. He got back into the boat and began circling the house even slower, back and forth, like he was trying to take the moment in. He came to a stop, and the way he was looking at the house, it felt like he could see us through the window. Then he turned the boat and drifted off back into the night. The police weren't very helpful. They took our story, briefly searched the perimeter, told us to call if he came back, and took the spear as evidence. Unsurprisingly, that was the last time I went to that lake house, and I don't plan on ever going back. As far as I know, they've never seen the man again, but remembering the way he circled the house and the scratching sound of him dragging the harpoon across the rock path still gives me chills.